Welcome to episode 227 of the Muck Podcast. Listen in as we discuss the dark and sometimes weird true stories in American politics. I'm Tina Hanamiya.
And I'm Hillary Doherty. Hi.
227 is the place to be. Remember, is it with Marla Gibbs and her family?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I don't know this. I don't know.
You don't know this? It was a show.
I know the show. I know that, but that was the theme song?
The theme song.
I don't remember. I just remember Jackie.
Oh my God,
Jackie.
She was the best.
That's the best impression I've ever done.
That was a really good impression.
Thank you.
What a cute show that was.
Yeah.
I don't remember much of it.
Yeah, I just remember the old lady sitting in the window and that being hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. The older black woman.
Yeah.
But that was a good show. That was a good show. It was a good show.
That was on that was the height of good shows, you know?
Yeah.
And another show that I loved, and I know we've talked about it before, and it's the Cosby Show.
Oh, I know.
And I had because I had a clip had come up of Claire.
So
she's
good.
yelling at the kids.
Yes. When she reads them.
Oh my God. I could not stop laughing. And I was like, you know what? I was like, guys, I got to show you some clips. It's just an iconic show.
I know. I think that we can try our best to enjoy what these people that were accused and that were canceled, what they did in the past. But I think we can enjoy it in the past. It's continuing to support them after knowing what they were up to, as in the public. I don't know how people around them knew these things were happening and did nothing, and then continue to support. I don't understand that.
And the rest of and the fact that the rest of that cast, that they're part of this iconic show, that then is destroyed because the main guy is a fucking asshole, horrible human being.
Yeah, it's dark.
And now, where everyone else kind of has these revivals or we're watching Friends and we're watching this, they don't get to have that because it's so tainted, So,
maybe later on, maybe after he dies or something.
Maybe.
But maybe not a revival, but they could I don't know.
But I had him watch a couple clips of that Bill Cosby himself stand up, and we just started laughing.
No, it's funny. He's hilarious.
It's just.
But I feel the same way about Louis C.K. because I've been rewatching. I literally feel like I've watched everything on television, so now I'm just rewatching Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, which Jerry Seinfeld has had his own issues this week. Or the last couple weeks, and I try to remind people that he's very old. Seinfeld's old.
He is old.
Let me look up how old he is.
I think an asshole.
Well, so
with his male,
I think
he's something about men.
Well, and I think that he is. Hold on, let me see how old this motherfucker is. I got my screen.
Remember when he dated that?
He's 70.
Okay, but remember when he dated
a
he's
been. There's been there's been things with Jerry Seinfeld that are completely fucking inappropriate, and at the time was inappropriate in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it was inappropriate then. Now looking back at it, it's shocking.
It's cringy, yeah.
But, he, like a lot of these older comedians, doesn't look at the world in the same... He's got a different point of view. It's an older point of view. He's not Jerry Seinfeld from the show.
Right.
He's a 70-year-old man who has a lens from when he grew up, right? And so... It has got, imagine your parents watching whatever the male equivalent now is of Steve McQueen. That doesn't exist anymore. I think that's the sort of idea of what he was saying. I'm not defending what he's saying. Obviously, I think men are toxic as fuck. But
I gotta bring it back to Sopranos. Is it sort of whatever happened to Gary Cooper?
Yes, exactly. It's exactly
like
that. Yeah. Where you can't... It's a longing for a time when men didn't discuss their emotional issues or
the strong silent type.
Yeah.
Or where men weren't held accountable for treating women like shit.
Yeah, but meanwhile those men were abusive, they were drunks, they were unable to they had no ability to express,
harassing women at work and everywhere else.
Expecting everything to come to them first. It was a different time. And that's what he's longing for because that's what he knows.
Yeah,
so it's not an excuse, but it's also he's living now in a time when you can't do that. It'd be like when we were growing up and who I love, Don Rickles saying something inappropriate. We'd all laugh because he was an old man.
Yeah.
And we just took it in stride because he was a funny guy.
Yeah,
but
and all those jokes were always against the wife,
Yes.
Yes. It was just the wife got ragged on all and some of it's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny.
It's funny.
Of
course it's funny. The Rodney Dangerfield of it all. It's hilarious. you could still make comedy like this whole thing about you'll get canceled. There's a way to do comedy about trans folks, about you can do it. I saw a clip on Twitter that was going around. It was a black woman, and she was talking about how she went on a date with a trans man and how he was broke. And she was like, well, she's like, we're here because you got money. She goes, you didn't transgender to a rich man? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a way to make jokes and be funny and
not be offensive, insulting, or
exactly.
Else.
There's a way to do it. You just, if you're writing comedy thinking I'm going to get canceled, you're going to get canceled.
Yeah.
Like,
then what are you writing?
Yeah. And also, there's a thing about Dave Chappelle, who I think is very funny, that he's obsessed with talking about it now because he knows it'll get him attention. His jokes aren't funny.
No.
Dave Chappelle's stand-up in the last 5 or 6 years is not funny.
No.
There's nothing funny about it.
No.
Sorry, but
that's like
pass.
He's like desperately trying to bring back what he was when he first came out. I mean, he was huge.
You expect everybody to have a sense of humor when you're denigrating them as human beings. There's no humor in it. Like, go. You got to work a little bit harder on those jokes. Okay? Talking about a joke, speaking of a joke, there was an opportunity this week to ensure that contraception is available to everyone in the United States to protect it. Because now we have a Congress that's aware that abortion will be taken off the table because,
they know it's going to be
gone. Democrats were shocked that could happen. And so now they're like, we better protect IVF. We better protect contraception. And they're putting these votes on the floor. And
we're getting it on
what was it, like 2 months ago, they said the Republicans were like, fuck IVF.
Right.
And they did not protect it.
Right.
And they did a vote this week to protect contraception. And Republicans blocked it.
Yep. All but two.
Yeah.
And of course, the two from the state of Florida who went along with it is our lovely Scott and Rubio, because, of course.
It's so weird too.
But the fact that I don't understand, like, they just want, it's we say it every time, they want to control women. Women have a right. I saw a clip of this. They were talking to this doctor, and she's backed by, I forget what the thing is called. It's one of these like cuckoo magoo Republican like rights organization, women's rights organizations, but like all the wrong rights. And she was saying that women that sex is like really only for procreation,
right?
And that's the only reason people should be having sex. And even like for like the level of abortion, that even if the fetus is non-viable, they want that to be born.
Mm-hmm. It's
crazy.
Yeah, no.
It's crazy. It's cuckoo. I don't understand it. And that sex isn't for pleasure. And like, I get the whole scientific thing. I get it, that the reason why it's pleasurable is because like we're supposed to go and procreate, right? Like, I understand
God
that.
made it feel good, so you'd make babies.
Right. But I'm sorry, we're like sentient beings. We're not just like animals running around town. You know what I mean? And so if we have the awareness that we don't want the result of procreation and we want to enjoy ourselves, why can't we just enjoy ourselves? Why? Well, I don't understand why we can't have
it's not God's will.
Pleasure in our lives.
It's not God's will.
Yeah, but no.
And God's will should not have any impact on laws that are being made in this country. Yeah,
that's
the difference. That's the difference. When you probe them, their whole belief behind exactly what you're saying, which by the way was the last 5 years of my marriage.
Yeah.
That's what all the sex was for. Procreation. So I've had these conversations for a long time, but when you really probe and you press these people in Congress or in the state legislatures of why, it always comes down to, well, God says, well, the Bible says, and those are base arguments that you can't counter once that's what someone believes. So those people should not be in government.
They should not be in government.
Yeah.
This is crazy. Because they know that they regulate it. And we see it. We see it in Republican southern states where there's no sex ed and all this stuff is hyper-regulated. You have teens that get pregnant, young people that get pregnant. They know that that's the result of it. They know what they're doing. And then they want to put...
Well, they don't care.
No, but they want to jail women. They want to, murder women who have abortions. Well, like, listen, we are heading into Gilead. We really are. I hate to be like that person that's like, oh my God, it's the Handmaid's Tale. But it's like, it's the fucking Handmaid's Tale.
Well, I mean, it's been all over my feed, and all I could think of, it's strategic, too, on the Democrats' part to keep putting these votes out there so that when they go back to run in their races and Biden himself can say, like, look at what they're doing and keep it going through November. And so it's definitely covered all over my feed on social media. I hope it's on other folks' feed as well, because that's where it really matters. A lot of people are unaware that these things are happening. They're unaware. We saw a bunch of polls, and I was like, yeah, but like, when did they start paying attention? Did they start paying attention now? Well, now that they re-registered to vote by mail, like, when are they looking? We're looking constantly. Yeah. There's some people who don't look until the day before the election.
And they think like, oh, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. I saw a poll last Sunday.
It's gonna happen.
I hate polls, okay? I don't the ones that are like, Trump's winning in these 10 important states. Yeah. I don't listen to that shit. I'm not gonna know until the day. We're not really gonna know. But there was a poll after that guilty finding last week. There was a poll that said 47% of adults that they polled believe that trial about his about the Stormy Daniels was politically motivated. As if he didn't commit the crimes.
I know.
He committed these crimes. So,
well, people are like, if they could come after you, if they could come after him, they could come after anyone. And then people are like, yeah, if you committed crimes.
Right. It's just like the Biden them in Congress with these special sessions where we're gonna investigate Joe Biden, and I was like, we're gonna try to impeach him. They have been trying to do that for 4 years. There's nothing there.
And like then
it would have happened already.
The Hunter Biden trial is starting and all that.
Good. Listen, he committed crimes. Goodbye. Yeah. What the fuck does that have to do with this?
Yeah, and like the thing is, like, you guys are all gung-ho about going after that guy.
Yeah.
But then when it's your guy, it doesn't make sense. Like, where we're like, yeah, Hunter Biden, if you fucked up, you gotta pay the price for it. Like, I'm not like, oh my God, that's the president's son and they're coming after. It's a witch hunt. It's a witch hunt. No, they investigated something and they're following through with it. And who cares? And the other thing that's driving me crazy is that, remember the Eugene Debs that we covered on the podcast? The MAGA folks are like latching onto that.
Right, as if he stood for the same things.
He did not, number one. But I'm like, what in the holy hell?
I know. Okay, so I was on Twitter and I saw this video. I put it in my stories on my Instagram, but it was a sheriff in California and he was in uniform in his patrol car endorsing Donald Trump. It was a 2.5 minute video and he was talking about all these different things and how the world is and da-da-da-da. And he's like, and I know that we lock up people who are arrested and they do felons and they get out and you know, da-da. He goes, but I'm ready to send a felon to the White House. You idiot! You fucking idiot, right? So I'm like, this gotta be fake. So I go to this, I find his Instagram, and it's a real fucking video. And I put it in my stories, but I also screenshot a comment that was like, you know, here's the California code. He's a California sheriff of where you can't be involved with publicly endorsing people or working for their campaign in uniform. You're not allowed to do that.
Good.
Like, hopefully someone, Gavin Newsom, hello.
Hi.
Remove this guy. Like, bad news. Bad news.
Yeah, DeSantis gets to remove people for
everything. And if you work in law enforcement or you're a firefighter, you're all allowed to endorse, pass that. We know how powerful the firefighters union is here, and they're at those polls, 5 or 6 of them every time, and they're not in their uniforms, but they're wearing their union shirts. And people love firefighters, but they're very red. It's very Republican, and you're allowed to do that, but you can't publicly endorse someone in your fucking uniform. And also, how fucking insane. This guy's a criminal. He's a criminal.
They don't care.
It's crazy. Girl.
They don't care.
This has not affected him one bit. I mean, honestly, I think personally he's broken from it. Honestly, I really feel like he's devastated that this has happened. Like, he's not this clean. He wants to sell himself as like this great businessman, and he's a fucking criminal. Yeah. And he's got to wear that the rest of his life. The worst thing this man ever did is come down a golden escalator and say, I'm going to run for president. He thought he was going to get, be able to make some money, sell some books, sell some steaks. That's literally what his plan was. His plan was never to make it to the White House. That was not the plan.
What the hell are we doing, America?
People are so dumb. Whatever. You'll have your fucking candidate. You know what? You want a felon in the White House? Go ahead. Go on. Take it.
But please,
you fucking
don't
idiots.
make him win.
Oh my God.
I can't handle a Trump win. I can't.
Oh no.
I'm telling you, like, I don't think I will be mentally, like, I will be a broken human. I'm telling you.
Same. Because I saw a clip you sent it to me. It was CNN, and they went in Michigan. There was this pro-Palestine conference, and there was a lot of voters there, obviously. So CNN reporter was talking to them, and the ones that were like, "No, I'm not voting for Biden," because this issue about Palestine is so important to them.
Well, these are also Palestinian Americans.
And it was a lot, and Michigan has a lot of Arab Americans.
What you know what I mean?
So they're watching, and the guy at the end, the young man at the end, was like, "I'm watching people who look like me, who sound like me, who talk like me, who listen to the music I listen to, who are part, they're dying, and he's not doing anything." And so I completely 100,000,000% understand not voting for Biden because of this. However, I knew this was coming. Right. We all could have seen this. How
the writing on the wall.
We could predict it. And this Biden administration doesn't understand how badly this was going to affect and how much. And by the way, Rafa is a joke. The red line, fuck you. There's no red line. They're doing whatever they care. Okay. Besides that, they're not going to vote for him. Now, I understand. I do not support what Israel is doing at all. I think the Biden administration is an epic failure in the worst time in election year this happened. Yeah. It's a failure on epic proportions what they've done. The lack of anything. It's disgusting. Okay, that's number one. I mean, they're negotiating, but no one's really sticking to it, and which is how it's always been. We don't hold Israel accountable ever. That being said, not voting for Biden is an even bigger failure in my opinion.
Because if Trump. I mean, God, he talked about the bans and all this. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
We can continue the protests against what America's support. We can continue to hold him accountable. We can continue to talk about Israel. We can continue to put it in the spotlight. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Hold Trump accountable.
Like, it will be a devastating there, and what's going to happen here will be even more devastating. Like, we will be losing things that you never thought you would ever see in America, and he will not leave office. No, that man will not leave office.
I can't even.
We're seeing laws being bent for him right now in Florida. Like, we have huge
DeSantis.
Amendment 4 passed 4 years ago.
I saw that headline. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
It was Amendment 4 where it was put on the ballot by petition, and then 75% of Floridians approved this to change our constitution so that former felons could get
returning
citizens could get their voting rights back. They didn't have to go through the long, arduous process of going to Tallahassee and begging the governor and the cabinet to get their votes back and spend all this money and waste all this time to do it, and then be told no. They literally were giving 1 or 2 people a year their voting rights back.
But he's already guaranteed.
And this amendment would have changed that. It would have changed it so that. But it still applies. But then the legislator added a poll tax to it and said you can't vote until you pay all your fines and fees, which is a Jim Crow era law,
and not just your restitution, because that's part you got to pay your restitution. But they're talking about basic court fees or
which is,
reinstating
thousands
their license,
of dollars.
Things it's such garbage. And then this DeSantis wants to just go automatically, I'll restore it for him. Right. How are you allowed to do that?
They're saying that a felony in another state doesn't affect your voting rights here.
And that's not true. You're so full of shit.
So they're going to do that for him so he can vote here because this is his home state.
I mean, DeSantis, you were such just...
It's in the
groveling little fool.
And it's in broad daylight.
A groveling little fool.
And they're saying they're going to do it to everybody. They're saying he's telling everybody he's going to do this for him. It's not a secret. Yeah. It's they don't give a fuck. They don't fucking care.
Listen, Trump isn't going to like you anymore because you do this for him. What do you think is going to come out of it?
I can't wait to see DeSantis stumping for him.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. It's going to make me so excited.
Yeah, I mean, all of these guys, the Ted Cruzes, all of these guys, a little Marco Rubio, What?
Marco,
who are
by
you?
the way,
that you have this guy destroy you, and you're like, okay, here I am.
Yeah, it's so weird. Marco Rubio, you never see him.
No, he doesn't exist.
The time between when his re-election will be in 2 years, and right now because Scott's is up, so he'll be in 2 years. But so every presidential election is 2 year the election between his other elections or whatever. Because I think he's 6 or whatever. I don't know. You never see him.
No.
You never hear from him. You don't see him at press conferences. No. You don't see him voting. I mean, I don't know where he goes. There's a little hole they keep him in somewhere.
He collects a check, man.
But as soon as there's election year, here he is with his fucking giant ears telling everybody what the fuck's up.
Oh
hey, everybody.
God. Yeah.
Oh, no, we don't need contraception in Florida.
What a dumbass. This Marco Rubio, I mean, we've gone to so many events where, like, they have cutouts of Marco Rubio because, like, he never shows up to anything.
Dude, that's where I met everybody. That might have been where I met you. I held an empty town hall. Yeah. That's where I met Emma for the first time. Oh, by the way, this week is the 7-year anniversary of when I first met Tina.
Oh!
You fucking believe this? This is the only reason Facebook is good, because it tells you. I put a picture up of me wearing my toxic masculinity shirt from My Favorite Murder, and I said, "Oh, last night I met my first murderino. It was fucking Tina. It was Tina."
Isn't
How wild!
Crazy?
Yeah,
crazy.
It's crazy. 7
fucking years.
Wow, and I never would have thought, like, who knew that we'd be sitting here doing this?
How it's wild.
It's wild.
I remember going to that town hall.
That was good.
Yeah, because I think I met Emma. Probably it was that January.
Yeah.
Because of Gabriella.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy how like all of the things.
Girl. The other thing I want to talk about was, let me tell you something, girl. I really feel like someone should be paying me for my gut feelings. Okay?
I
should get money for that.
No, you gotta do like, remember, call Chloe.
Yeah. Miss Chloe.
Miss Hillary.
I'm telling you.
We're going to do a Miss Hillary line.
I can have a conversation.
Money, girl.
I can have a conversation with someone or watch them speak, and within 5 minutes, I know they're a bullshitter. Like, it is wild. And it's now, like, let me give credit to where it's due. My father is a first-class bullshitter. So I was raised by someone who could spin a tale. And, you look at him and he's telling you the story, and he's like, I don't know, this is real. Is it right? So that's given me the skills that I needed in life to see who's real, who's not real. And after watching the superintendent negotiations, that Peter Licata, who was our previous superintendent we talked about a couple weeks ago, his behavior, his demeanor at that school board meeting, Broward County School Board meeting. And at the end, I sent you the video of him after these negotiations. He was... That whole thing, I was like, this is psychotic. Yeah. It's insane. His behavior was insane. And it made the little hairs in the back of my neck stand up. I'm like, there's something off. Something's off with this guy. Oh. Well, comes out this week. There's a huge story here, okay, in Broward County. A young girl, transgender girl in high school, wanted to play volleyball on her team. But, of course, we live in the 7th layer of hell. Yeah. And level of hell. Right. And it is
not free state of Florida.
Yeah, and you are not allowed to participate in sports that are not your biological sex. That's a law that was recently passed.
This is the stupidest thing. How many times have you seen kids? I saw a kid recently play on a soccer team.
Who gives a fuck?
Who cares?
By the way, I don't care.
Nobody cares.
And so, by the way, nobody who played on the team, even if they knew they didn't care, and a lot of them did, even the coach had no idea what was going on. He was a coach. I told you, he didn't work at the school. Yeah. He was hired. Even in the paper when this whole thing came out, he was like, when the reporters were asking him, he goes, wait, who? Which student? Had no clue. And it's not like that's called stealth, right? Where you can move through the world and people can't clock you, right? Either way, it's not their business to be disclosing who's transgender and who's not. So this investigation started about 6 or 7 months ago when, according to the news conference, the clip that was reshared this week by Scott Travis on Sun Sentinel, when this whole thing blew up, Peter Licata said that he had received an anonymous tip from a constituent, someone who lived in Broward County, that this transgender girl was playing high school sports at her high school, volleyball. So he immediately took action and removed the principal, the vice principal, some administrators, the coach. The transgender girl's mother works at the school, removed her. They moved him to other places around the county to do this investigation. Well, the high school association or whatever does this investigation, and they found that people lied, or the mother put female on the form, even because her birth certificate had changed. They had gotten a new birth certificate. Everything was in order.
So,
but
why can't they change it?
They didn't disclose, this thing.
Yeah, I saw that because the mom worked and she was able to go in and like change it. Electronically too.
But she gave the right information. She gave them the information. It wasn't.
This is horrible.
So everybody was reinstated. Everybody was reinstated except this week the association recommended to the school board that this mother who worked at the school be fired. And so what else came out in the investigation? Because I don't know what the school board would do. We can discuss that in a second. But what else came out is that it wasn't an anonymous tip that went to Superintendent Licata. It was an actual phone call from a fellow school board member, Daniel Fogenholi, who's a DeSantis appointed school board member. So he lied. Licata lied to protect Fogenholi.
Right.
Why? Who did Fogenholi? If Fogenholi got the anonymous tip, why not say that? School board member Fogenholi got this tip. Yeah. Why are you lying for Fogenholi? This is what I mean about Licata. And by the way, it's also super convenient.
Fogenholi knows that he's up for election. Yeah. And that this isn't going to look so good.
And why do you want that guy getting reelected, by the way, Licata?
Yeah.
Why do you want him reelected?
First of all, as superintendent, you shouldn't be involved.
Yeah.
In any of that.
Give me the person's phone. Have the anonymous tip call me.
Right.
Let me talk to them. Let me figure this out. So, also, I find it super fucking convenient for him that this all comes out.
And then he's like, bye.
Like 2 weeks after he's negotiated this contract to leave. Really convenient, by the way. Anything else going to come out about this motherfucker who was here to stabilize us? Right. Oh, he's so helpful. Anything else we can find out about him now that he's gone? That's fucking gross. It's gross. This man wanted to walk away with $204,000 fucking dollars, and thank God this board came to their senses. Yeah. Because I can't even imagine what else he knows. He knew this was going to come out, and he didn't want to be sitting there listening to it, which makes me wonder, why did he really leave the board?
Well, the other thing, I'm wondering that too, and I'm wondering, is it also what is the purpose? Why come into Broward? I don't understand. He had a sweet job in the county that he came from. Why make this move only to then leave? Just stay where you were. None of it makes sense to me.
He's a piece of shit.
None of it makes sense.
And I don't care. Y'all, I don't give a fuck. And the comments on that tweet were like, good for him, good for Fogenholi, all the trolls that come out. I gotta tell you, I don't know what's gonna happen with this mother. I don't know if I was sitting on the school board what I would do, because here's the deal. This is the black and white of it all.
Right.
This is a law that she broke.
Right.
And they can prove it.
Right.
Because I think the birth certificate didn't come until after she started playing the sport. So, there's a thing where she did break this law. Well, and so the school board cannot give her a pass. Because if they do, and DeSantis hears about it, which he will, he can remove people from the school board. And so who do we protect? We hate this law, but this is a law we have to go abide by. What can you do as school board members?
And at your job, you can't change those records. You know what I mean? You can't go in and kind of... Because remember, we had that whole thing, the hacking thing that happened in Broward. They're very strict on,
The other thing, too, is that...
has access, what you have access to. Yeah. And so...
As a mother, what would you not do for your child? And the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, because we live here... to be able to play sports like that, you got to go to a city league or a county or whatever sort of club that will do volleyball and not ask those sorts of questions and not give a fuck. Because unfortunately, under the school board, county, state, it's not a safe place for your child. And honestly, I wouldn't want my child to be involved in that. And the damage that has been done by outing, because a lot of the students didn't even know that this young woman was transgender. Didn't even know. So because the mother was fired, it was very clear
who it is.
And outed this child.
Oh my God. I can't stand
So fuck you.
I can't stand it.
Fuck you, Fogenholi. Fuck you, Licata. This young woman could have moved through the last few years of her high school career playing fucking volleyball. This isn't the Olympics, all right? It's fucking high school volleyball. Fuck off.
And
who would they have hurt?
Right.
And the ripple effect of damage you have done to this woman, this young woman, her mother, the students. Fuck you. It's an example. It's just one example of how these laws are dangerous and damaging to people.
And who's this anonymous tipster? Like,
yeah,
who
no,
are you?
That's something else. There's something else there.
By the way, that you have nothing else going on in your life, that you want to harm a kid.
Yeah. By the way,
what kind of person are you that you want to harm a child? That's a disgusting person.
And also,
because you got to put kids before you.
Yeah.
Whether or not you agree with what's going on with them, like what kind of adult is gonna hurt a kid?
By the way, here's the other part. Now that the investigation is closed, did they ask Fogenholi? Who let him know? Is that in the investigation? Did anybody talk to Fogenholi about this?
Or was it just
where did he find this out? That's a very good question. Where was this? How did this happen?
Because if everybody else's life is upended, then Mr. Anonymous needs to, or Mrs. Anonymous, or whoever the hell this is, needs to go. How did you find out?
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you find out? Was it a guess?
Have to find out.
Or because how do you know that? Like on a whim, now anybody can call the school board and go, I think this is a transgendered person.
Right.
Go investigate. Is that what's happening?
Which, by the way,
is that what's happening?
It's so, yeah. I think that's what's happening. Well, that's why that law that was a few sessions ago was about looking at genitals. Literally wanting to pull the pants down of children and looking at genitals.
I can't.
That's in the law!
I can't.
Last thing before we start our story is that the Florida Black Girls is back. And they had taken like a year off, which I can't even imagine taking a year off. But they have a new podcast out. It's really good. But they talk about why. And, it's been a hard year for people. And I totally get that. So I'm excited that they're back. It's Lindsay Pollard, Jasmine Rogers, Maya Brown, all friends of the show, friends of us, friends of our podcast, friends of us in life.
Women.
They work in Florida politics. Yeah. And they have such a wonderful, amazing perspective. Yes. And through the eyes of Black women, it's amazing to hear. And they also are... I was commenting on I was watching it on YouTube, and I was like, they're just so supportive of each other and kind to each other, and I really enjoy it. So go check it out. I think it's a very interesting. They're insiders.
Yes. They know what's going on.
They know what's going on.
Yeah.
So all right, go check out Florida Black Girls. Ooh. And are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, so this is major trigger warning, abuse of children. I'm so sorry to do this to you on a Saturday morning. Oh, Tina. Yeah. I know, this is a Tina. This would be a Tina story, and I'd be crying. And today, I am covering the Florida School for Boys, a.k.a. the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys.
Oh.
Okay, so... I'll tell you a little bit later on how I found this story this week. But, okay, so the Florida School for Boys, also known as the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys, was a reform school operated by the state of Florida in the panhandle town of Marianna from January 1st, 1900 to January 30th, 2011.
What?
Over 100, is that 100 years? No, what? Wait.
Well, we can't do math.
I can't do math.
What do you want from
I think
us?
it's 100 years.
Yeah.
111.
It's a long ass time. Is what it is.
Have you ever been to Marianna?
No.
Okay, so Marianna is this cute little town.
Is it like old school Florida charm?
It's like a cracker town.
Oh.
And now, can I say cracker? Because last week we had to cut a whole section because I said things that I shouldn't be saying. But I think I can say cracker.
I think so.
Let me look at this. Yeah. I can say cracker. So anyway, rightfully so, though. It was right to cut it. Anyway, so it's a little town, and I've been there because it's also where there's a state park where it's the Florida State Caverns. Oh. Which are incredible. If you ever get to go up there, we camp there, and you go down to these caverns. They have stalagmites, stalactites, to do that. You know what I'm talking about? Fucking gorgeous. Beautiful. Only caverns in the state of Florida. Yeah. Amazing. Beautiful. But it's this little tiny dinky town. And there's a huge jail there. And the school that used to be there.
Jail and caves.
Yeah. Okay. So next to the giant jail was the school for boys and the caves.
Oh. Okay, this does not already it doesn't sound good.
Yeah. So a second campus was opened in the town of Okeechobee in 1955. For a time, it was the largest juvenile reform institution in the United States. Throughout its 111-year history, the school gained a reputation for abuse, beatings, rapes, tortures, and even murder of students by staff. Despite periodic investigations, changes of leadership, and promises to improve, the allegations of cruelty and abuse continued. After the school failed
111 years.
Yeah.
Oh God, I hate
After the school failed a state inspection in 2009, the governor, who was Charlie Crist at the time, ordered a full investigation. Many of the historic and recent allegations of abuse and violence were confirmed by separate investigations by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in 2010 and by the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice in 2011. State authorities closed the school permanently in June 2011, and at the time of its closure, it was part of the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice. It kind of changes hands throughout the years, but once it goes into a prison sort of idea, like, doesn't seem like a reform anymore.
Like an alternative school for kids that are getting into trouble.
Yeah.
And from like what, 10 to 18 or
it's a lot younger earlier on, but it does end up being like 16 to 21, which by the way, that's 16 and 21-year-olds are not the same.
They shouldn't be in the
They're not the same.
No.
Like, so according to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the school first organized under an 1897 act of the legislature and began operations on the Mariana campus on January 1st, 1900 as the Florida State Reform School. It was overseen by 5 commissioners appointed by the governor, William Dunnington Bloxam, who were to operate the school and make reports every 2 years to the legislature. Now, that seems like a long time between checking in on the school.
Yeah.
That's how it is for charter schools now. They have 2 years before they'll start. Like, they do testing there.
Yeah.
And they have to meet a standard. And if they fail the first year, they have another year to get it up. And then they'll close it, apparently, if they don't meet these standards. But the standards, obviously, are very fucking low. So your kid could be in a charter school where they're not reaching the level they need to be at.
And then, but
not
they just collect the money and then it shuts down.
And then it shuts down and then they open another. Yeah, exactly.
I can't.
I know. At some time thereafter, the commissioners were replaced by the governor and cabinet of Florida, acting as the board of commissioners of state institutions. In 1967, the name of the Mariana campus was changed to Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys in honor of a former superintendent of the school. So, from its opening in 1900, the Mariana site was an open campus of about 1,400 acres without any perimeter fencing. The site was originally divided into 2 sub-campuses, South Side, or number 1, for white students, and North Side, or number 2, for, they said, colored students, right? So, black children, black boys. The sections were segregated until 1966.
Oh my God.
Yay, civil rights. In 1929, an 11-room concrete block detention building, also containing cells with white students, was constructed to house incorrigible or violent students, the site at the time not being fenced. And this students called it the White House, which I have pictures of in my notes. Then in the 1950s and in the 1960s, it was the site of most of the beatings of students. That's where they would take them in there. Black boys were also punished in the form of whippings and beatings in the White House, but were detained in segregated isolation cells on the other side of the campus. So, some of the abuse. 1903 and in 1903. So, 2 years after it opens, an inspection report reported that children at the school were commonly kept in leg irons. Now, I'm sorry.
What?
How are we now still open 108 years later? 9 years later. No, this is not a math episode. We're going to call this math episode.
No.
How are you still open? How is it able to continue to stay open after this? Irons.
This is insane.
According to the 2012 interim report by Erin Kimmerell from the University of South Florida, she comes in later on to do all kinds of work. The school was investigated by the state 6 times during its first 13 years of operation.
6 times?
A fire in a dormitory at the school in 1914 killed 6 students and 2 staff members. You imagine your kid goes away to a reform school because they stole a pack of fucking gum or cigarettes or something in the early 1900s, and they burn to death and they don't come home?
And so this is a reform school. Are they getting educated here?
There was a schoolhouse.
Is there? I'm just curious.
I don't think
how are they selling it as a reform school? Or is it just straight up like a detention center?
I think it later on became more of a detention, but there was a school. But I don't know how good even that was. So 11 students were recorded as having died in the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic. A 13-year-old boy sent to the school in 1934 for trespassing. He died 38 days after arriving there.
Why? They don't know? Oh my God.
There's lots of death that nobody knows what the fuck happened here.
Oh my God.
So moving into the 1960s, in 1968, Florida Governor Claude Kirk said after a visit to the school where he found overcrowding and poor conditions that, quote, somebody should have blown the whistle a long time ago, end quote.
This is in the 60s, and then it went through 2011.
You're the fucking governor. Blow the whistle. Right. You're literally the one who leads the entire fucking... You're on the board. You fucking dope. At this time, the school housed 564 boys, some for offenses as minor as school truancy, running away from home, or incorrigibility, including cigarette smoking.
Come on. They're locking them away? And this is the time we want to go back to?
Girl.
This is the great time in America?
They ranged in age from 10 to 16 years old. Girl. In 1969, as part of the governmental reorganization, the school came under the management of the Division of Youth Services, which was the newly created Department of Health and Rehabilitation Services, HRS. Remember when we were kids, all my friends would be like, I'm going to call HRS on my parents. I'm going to call HRS on my parents. Sometimes I'd say, I'm calling HRS. That was a big thing in Florida, HRS.
I don't remember that.
Kids, you threaten your parents with HRS, you better be careful. Oh my God, HRS. Okay, so in 1982, an inspection revealed that boys at the school were hogtied and kept in isolation for weeks at a time. Still didn't close it for 40 more years. 40 more years. The ACLU filed a lawsuit over this and similar mistreatment at a total of 3 juvenile facilities in Florida. By this time, the Dozier School was housing 105 boys aged 13 to 21. Federal lawsuits, by the way, 21 is not a boy.
No.
Go to fucking jail. Get them out. The federal lawsuits concerning school conditions resulted in the Department of Justice's monitoring Florida juvenile justice system beginning in 1987. In 1985, the media reported that young ex-students of the school sentenced to jail terms for crimes committed at Dozier had subsequently been the victims of torture by guards at the Jackson County Jail. So if the boys committed crimes while they were there, they would send them to the prison.
And then they get abused at the prison.
Yeah.
How are they supposed to exist in the world with this?
Wouldn't you just want to die? The prison guards typically handcuffed the teenagers and hanged them from the bars of their cells, sometimes for over an hour. The guards said their superiors approved the practice and that it was routine. In 1994, the school was placed under the management of the newly created Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, which operated the school until its closure in 2011. By this time, the school had facilities to house 135 inmates. Many of the boys sent there had been convicted of rape, at this point it's now more, or of committing, quote, lewd acts on other children, end quote. On September 16, 1998, a resident of the school lost his right arm in a washing machine.
How do you do that?
Girl.
That doesn't make any sense.
Something's up.
Something happened. That's weird.
A lawsuit was filed against the institution. The plaintiff was awarded an undisclosed amount in 2003. Something else happened.
Something else happened.
Okay, so in April 2007, the acting superintendent of the school and one other employee were fired following allegations of abuse of inmates. The state officially acknowledged that abuses had taken place there. The White House Boys, a growing group of adult survivors who had been held there in the 1950s and 60s, were speaking out to the press. So now that these men are someone's finally saying something, now we're going to start looking into the school. And in late 2009, the school failed its annual inspection. Among other problems, the inspection found that the school failed to deal properly with the numerous complaints by the boys held there, including allegations of continued mistreatments by the guards. State Representative Daryl Rusin said the system was struggling to move on from a long-standing, quote, culture of violence and abuse, end quote.
Wow.
The U.S. Department of Justice conducted a survey of 195 U.S. facilities, including the Florida School for Boys. According to its 2010 report, 11.3% of boys surveyed at the school reported they had been subject to sexual abuse by staff using force in the last 12 months, and 10% reported that they had been subject to it without the use of force. Now, that doesn't mean they're consenting.
Yeah.
And then 2% reported sexual victimization by another inmate. So it's mostly the guards doing this. The DOJ said these percentages meant the home was deemed to have neither high nor low rates of sexual victimization compared with the other institutions assessed in the survey. Isn't like 1% too much? Isn't that too much?
I don't even understand what
That's
you're saying.
insane.
I don't even
That's the
understand what
culture of abuse that we just allow in prisons. Is that what's happening? And these are children. Fuck off. In July 2010, the state announced its plan to merger the Dozier with the juvenile justice system, creating a single new facility in the North Florida Youth Development Center with an open campus and a closed campus. However, the following year, claiming budgetary limitations, the state decided to close both facilities on June 30th, 2011. Remaining students were then sent to the juvenile justice facilities around the state.
Great.
Okay, so these White House boys that start coming out.
Do they give, like, therapy to these kids?
Oh, Tina, please. Please.
I mean, but it's 2000 something. You would think that they would try to help these kids.
No, girl. In the late 1990s, former students who had been held at the school in the 1950s and 60s began to share accounts of abuses that they had suffered or observed against students. They organized as a group who became known as the White House Boys. By early 2001, there were about 400 members or survivors of the school from the 1950s and 60s. Members of the group spoke about their experiences to the media and to challenge the state to investigate these practices and the personnel at the school. More than 300 men had publicly recounted abuse and torture at the school.
Jesus.
In 2009, the Florida School for Boys was the subject of an extensive special report called For Their Own Good, published by the St. Petersburg Times.
I got like goosebumps from this.
Allegations focusing on the 1960s included claims that one room was used for whipping white boys and another was used for whipping black boys. The whippings were carried out by guards using a 3-foot-long belt made of leather and metal, and were so severe that the victim's underwear could become embedded in their skin.
Oh my God!
There's nothing anybody does ever that they deserve that sort of punishment. No, there's nothing. They're supposed to be at school.
These are kids.
One former student said that he had seen a boy trapped in a running laundry dryer at the school and suspected the boy was killed.
That's maybe how the washing machine incident
stick your arm in there. One former student stated he was punished in the White House 11 times, receiving a total of more than 250 lashes. Others alleged they were whipped until they lost consciousness and that the punishments were made harsher for boys who cried. Is that what Jerry Seinfeld's looking for?
Yeah, that masculinity.
I'm going to whip you, but don't cry. Be strong. Some alumni also stated that there was a rape room at the school where boys were sexually abused by the guards. The complainants said some of the victims were as young as 9 years old. I can't. Girl. So let's go into these investigations. So the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in 2010. So what they came out with, so Charlie Crist, directed them to investigate, and the allegations of abuse and torture and murder recounted by these boys and their law firm, because now they're like forcing it. Crist requested that the department determine, one, that the entity that owned or operated the property at the time the graves were placed, because they started to find graves. Identification, where possible, of the remains of those individuals buried on the site, and also determine if any crimes were committed, and if so, the perpetrators of those crimes. So these boys were saying that a lot of kids would die and they were buried, and sometimes the families, their sons went there and they don't know what happened to them. They didn't come home, or they said, they ran away or something like that. But
meanwhile, they're dead and buried.
Yeah.
Wow.
So FDLE conducted more than 100 interviews of former students, family members of former students, and former staff members of the school during their 15-month investigation. But no concrete evidence was found linking any of the student deaths to the actions of school staff, or that there had been attempts by staff to conceal deaths. Now, this is the Florida department that's finding these. So,
but there's graves.
Yeah, girl, it's dumb.
So how did they get there?
No.
Who put them there?
No. None of the graves were opened during their investigation, and they determined, their investigation determined that there was 31 graves at the facility that had been dug between 1914 and 1952. A forensic examination of the White House was conducted, and there was no trace evidence of blood on the walls, right, of course. Troy Tidwell, who was a staff member at the school during that period, said that punishments in the White House were not excessive. He said staff used a leather strap because they were concerned that spankings with wooden paddles, as had previously taken place, might injure the boys. So we'll use the belt instead.
Okay. They're full of shit.
Yeah. So this is their findings in 2010. The investigation included over 100 interviews of, this is a quote, of former students, family, former staff, former school staff members of the school. The interviews confirmed that in addition to the implementation of the individual rating system, school administrators used corporal punishment as a tool to encourage obedience. The interviews revealed little disagreement about the way in which corporal punishment was administered, and the former students were consistent in that punishment and was administered by school administrators and adult staff witnesses in the buildings referred to as the White House. The former students were consistent in stating that a wooden paddle or leather strap was the implement used for administering punishment. The area of disagreement among former students was the number of spankings administered and their severity.
Oh.
So, like, one or two of these guys were like, it wasn't that bad. And they're like, oh, so it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Although some former students stated that they were beaten to the point that the skin of their buttocks blistered and bled profusely, there was little to no evidence of visible residual scarring. A secondary disagreement was the former students' perceptions of the punishment process. Some former students stated that their
perception.
Yeah. So what's the big deal? So what? So it was a little hard on you, but it wasn't hard on everybody. It's fucked up. Some reports by former students stated that in addition to corporal punishment, they were also subjected to sexual abuse at the hands of former staff members or other students. With the passage of over 50 years, no tangible physical evidence was found to either support or refute the allegations of physical or sexual abuse. So, because of this report, in March 2010, State Attorney Glenn Hess announced that no criminal charges would be filed in this case.
That's so nice.
After interviewing investigators and attorneys representing both the White House boys and an administrator, and after reviewing the Department of Law Enforcement's report, Hess concluded that he would be unable to prove or disprove criminal wrongdoing in the case of a court of law. So the Department of Justice is like, well, we'll look into it. So in 2011, in their report, the Dozier School, the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice made the following findings about staff at the school who were cited for use of excessive force, inappropriate isolation, and extension of confinement. And their report said, quote, the youth confined at Dozier and at JJOC were subjected to conditions that placed them at serious risk or avoidable harm in violation of their rights protected by the Constitution of the United States.
Wow, it's funny how they're different.
Yeah. During our investigation, we received credible reports of misconduct by staff members to youth within their custody. The allegations revealed systematic, egregious, and dangerous practices exacerbated by a lack of accountability and controls. These systematic deficiencies exist because state policies and generally accepted juvenile justice procedures were not being followed. We found that staff did not receive minimal adequate training. We also found that proper supervision and accountability measures were limited and did not suffice to prevent undue restraints and punishments. Staff failed to report allegations of abuse to the state. Supervisors and administrators, staff members often failed to accurately describe use of force incidents and properly record use of mechanical restraints, which means the staff members that weren't doing it but were witnessing it weren't telling anybody. They weren't telling. Nobody stopped and said, what the fuck is going on here?
Or this is wrong.
And they don't know how to work with kids.
Wow.
I know. So then they start getting into, because of these allegations of like people are dying, they're like, well, where are they? Right? They've got to be on this 1,400 acres somewhere.
Well, their graves are there.
Yeah. So this Erin Kimmerell, I hope I'm saying her name right, a forensic anthropologist at the University of South Florida, associate professor, led a USF team of anthropologists, biologists, and archaeologists exploring the Mariana campus in a project authorized by the state. So this is between 2012 and 2014.
Wow.
The stories of the White House boys piqued her interest as she had worked with international groups to identify remains and burials in areas of warfare. Wow. So she thought that specialists at her university could aid the state in identifying undocumented areas of burial by using current technology and scientific techniques. Okay. She was especially curious why there were no records of the locations of the burials, as it's customary at state prisons, hospitals, and similar institutions. Because there was a graveyard there.
Right, because you said it was through the 50s, but then they were supposedly kids were having gone missing or whatnot
the whole
time. So where are those kids?
Yeah, and there was a graveyard, but for the amount of people that were missing, there weren't enough graves.
Where did they find these kids?
So Kimmerell said, quote, when you look at the state hospital, the state prisons, the other state institutions at the time, there are very meticulous plot maps you can reference. Or if you are a family member today, you can say, where's my great aunt buried? And they can show you exactly where. So why didn't that happen here? I don't know. But that does stand out, end quote. Okay, so in 2012, the team used ground-penetrating radar and some excavations to identify where bodies were buried. However, in order to determine if the cause of death was from injury, illness, or murder, the bodies must be exhumed.
Right.
Given the long history of reported violence at the school, many people believe that some students died because of abuse.
Right.
Under existing law, exhumations can be done only at the request of a family member.
But they didn't have... If you don't know who the kids are...
fucking 100 years ago.
Well, and if you don't know who these kids
how do you know who to ask?
How do you know that this particular thing that we found with the radar is that particular child?
Girl.
You gotta be kidding me.
Many of the burials are of students who were here in the early 20th century, and records made it difficult to identify their families. By December 2012, the researchers had located 55 graves on the grounds. Given that they had documented nearly 100 deaths at the school, the team believed that a secondary cemetery was likely to exist. Thomas Varnado.
Oh my God, I'm covered in goosebumps.
Thomas Varnado, who was sent to the Florida School for Boys in 1934 and died there a month later. His nephew, Glenn Varnado, came forward in 2012 saying that he wanted to have his uncle's remains exhumed for reinternment at his family cemetery near Lakeland. So he had visited Dozier School in the 1990s, and a staff member showed him where his uncle was buried. That location was not the same as the area where the most recent burials were found. The state originally limited the USF team, the state. Now,
the state doesn't want this to come out.
You motherfuckers.
They don't want this to come out. They don't want to make anybody seem bad. They don't want any tarnish. I cannot stand this.
They're going to limit... Oh, you gotta be kidding.
Ooh, there's a reason.
They limited them to searching the existing delineated cemetery grounds, saying that they did not have the authority to order exhumation of these graves. Any other graves.
Because why not?
So
why not?
We're gonna go to court because fuck y'all.
Yeah.
Right? So when the state announced plans to sell much of the Dozier property for redevelopment, could you imagine? It's
like Poltergeist.
Yeah! I was thinking, that shit's haunted, bitch.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little kid walking around.
Oh my God.
Oh God, it's awful. It's awful. It's awful. So Varnado then filed a suit against the action as he was a family member seeking specific exhumation. A judge issued a temporary injunction blocking the sale until Thomas Varnado's body was exhumed.
So now they got to go.
Now they got to do it.
Ooh,
state officials
got to do a DNA match and try to find it. Oh
state officials subsequently granted the university team permission to search all areas of the former facility.
Because they want that money from that land,
for possible burial sites. They requested federal funds, of course, to pay for a forensic examination of all the graves on the grounds. And on August 6, 2013, Governor Rick Scott and the Florida cabinet issued a permit allowing a team of allowing them to go in, excavate, examine, and the remains of anyone who they found buried there. Okay, so they began doing this on August 31st, 2013, and according to Robert Straley, a spokesman for the White House Boys, he said the school segregated white and black inmates, and the remains were also located where black inmates were held. So, they also buried them separately.
Right.
He suspects that there's another white cemetery that hasn't been discovered. He said, quote, "I think that there are at least 100 more bodies up there. At some point, they are going to find more bodies. I'm dead certain of that. There has to be a white graveyard on the white side," end quote. So bones, teeth, and artifacts from grave sites were sent to the University of North Texas Health Science Center for DNA testing. In January 2014, Kimberly announced that excavations had yielded remains of 55 bodies, almost twice the number documented in official records.
Jesus.
By September...
and that's just from the one cemetery.
Yeah. By September 2014, the remains of 3 boys, George Owen Smith, who was reported missing in 1940, Thomas Varnado, who reportedly died of pneumonia in 1934, and Earl Wilson, who died in 1944, had been identified. In January 2016, the USF team issued its final report. The team had made a total of 7 DNA matches and 14 presumptive identifications from the 51 remains found at the site. So because it's been so long, they don't even
know who these babies are.
A total of 55 burials were identified, but only 13 were made within the cemetery grounds. And, quote, "The rest of the graves were outside in the woods, including under a roadway, under a brush, and under a large mulberry tree," end quote.
Oh my God.
So
they're gone.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's 42 bodies that were hidden, buried somewhere else.
Wow.
While they had documented 98 deaths at the site, they were unable to identify any more burials on the grounds.
Wow.
Some bodies may have been sent home to students' families, right? So they died and they sent their bodies home. The USF team will continue to work with other organizations and families on DNA and other means of identification of the remains that were found. They created computer facial approximations from remains to help with identification. A number of families, including the Glenvarnedo family, have filed requests to have the remains of their children or relatives repatriated, which means they could take them out and bury them somewhere else. Right. I think that's what that means. In late March 2019, an additional 27 possible graves were identified during a pollution cleanup at the Dozier site. So they found more graves. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis directed state agencies to work with Jackson County officials to, quote, develop a path forward.
Well, they're definitely going to develop the land, so...
Yeah. What's the aftermath of all this? So
this
in February...
is insane.
Yeah. In February...
Did they... It's so old. So were they able to find any means of death, or just the remains are too old for them to know? If, you know, someone
they didn't come out with anything saying that they were...
murdered or anything.
Yeah. So in February 2010, the White House boys filed a class action suit for damages against the state government.
Good.
But it was dismissed by a judge in Leon County, because that's cracker country, honey. Yeah. That's KKK country, Leon County.
Yeah, they don't care.
Because the statute of limitations had just run out for this suit.
Oh
my God.
These statute of limitations, man. It's not right, because sometimes people don't know.
Yeah. A bill introduced in the 2012 session of the Florida legislature to provide compensation to victims of abuse at the school failed to pass. In March 2014, Governor Rick Scott signed a bill authorizing up to $7,500 per burial for those families who wanted to reinter the remains of their relatives identified in unmarked graves. So that's nice. In 2017, the state officially apologized to about 24 survivors and families. Finally, in 2024, a bipartisan bill called the Dozier School for Boys and Okeechobee School Victim Compensation Program passed both the Florida House and the Florida Senate.
Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah. The bill establishes a compensation program requiring that the Department of Legal Affairs to accept and process applications for the payment of compensation claims. Now, I don't know how much they would get, or I'm not sure. So this is how I found it, is that there was an editorial in the Sun Sentinel this week, and it was all the bills that are still sitting on his desk. And it was saying, please sign these and veto these. And this one they're saying, please sign it. And he hasn't yet. So I'm thinking that he will, because...
It passed both.
It passed both, but also he has a kind of we can look back at what he's already done, and we can't forget that Governor DeSantis signed a pardon of the Groveland Four. Remember that? Yeah. I covered it on episode 75 of the podcast. It was 4 black men in Central Florida in the 60s who were accused of raping a white woman, and they were all put in jail. A couple of them had died. It was awful. It was 4 men, but he gave them a pardon and signed that. So
he'll sign it.
I'm thinking he will,
because this isn't a contentious. You know, if it's anything contentious, then you got to worry. But otherwise, this is like, I feel like something. What a story!
Ooh, girl,
what a story!
And there's something else about state and children that I wanted to mention. I don't know if you saw this. There's a Netflix documentary called Take Care of Maya.
Oh, I've heard of this.
It is wild. It's in Florida. They live in Tampa, this family. And the daughter, like, out of nowhere, starts to have all these horrible, gets sick. And, it's affecting her. She's in pain. And she's, 8 maybe. And she's she's devastating, right? And so the family is looking to get help for her. Doctors aren't really giving them the answers. And they finally go see this one doctor. And he's like, I know what this is, but... we don't treat this. I forgot what it is. Forgive me. Yeah. But we don't treat this sort of thing here. But she needs relief. And one of the things that they have found in studies is they give them ketamine. Oh. And ketamine, if you give it to her on a regular basis, all of that will go away. And so they had to go to Mexico for the treatment, where they put her in a coma and they pump her full of ketamine, and she's in a coma for a week. And when she comes out, it took her a while to get back in, but she was now. It's like it tricked her brain or something. Right. And so they get her back home in Florida, and part of the treatment is you give her this regular ketamine. Well, something happens one day, and it starts to all come back. I forgot what it was, but they take her back to the hospital, and now the nurses are like, well, what does she take? Well, she's got this disease, and this is what the treatment is. oh boy, that was it. Red flags, and they immediately contact the Department of Children and Home and Services, whatever, HRS, and they just come in and they immediately file an order where she can't see her parents anymore.
Oh my God.
And it totally devastates this mother because her little girl is in the hospital alone.
Oh my God.
She could talk to her on the phone. The father could visit, but there had to be someone there. They couldn't talk about this court case. So the little girl's there, has no idea why her mother's not coming.
Oh my God.
No idea what's going on. She's alone in this fucking hospital. The mother is out of her mind.
No, I would be hysterical.
And she's on the phone with her and she's talking, and as soon as she would say something that was even close to like, why aren't you here, mommy, or whatever, the woman would be like, you can't talk about that. You know, like cutting off the communication between the daughter and the mother. It was, and this woman, I mean, spoiler alert, but she kills herself.
The mom?
Yeah.
No.
Because this judge, they had a hearing where she could go visit the daughter, and like it had been months. She hadn't seen the daughter in like 6 months.
I don't even know what I would do without my
and
babies.
The judge, it was like all along, I don't know if it was online or whatever, but he was like, no, you're not yet. And the next day, like they found her, and the note was just like, take care of Maya. Like it ruined this woman. It ruined her.
No, this
ruined her.
girl.
And she had a brother.
Oh no.
What? But I just read a case this week that has happened again in, I think, Virginia. They took these people had like twins that were maybe 8 or 9 months old, and one of the twins had broken his leg. I don't know. It was an accident. Like, these things happen. Kids get hurt. And they're like, well, we need to look at your other baby. So they brought the other baby in for, I don't know, whatever reason. And the fucking courts come in, and these parents have not seen their children. Like, this happens a lot, apparently. Where they suspect abuse, they can cut you out of your children's life. Girl.
Oh my God. I would have a heart attack.
Oh, no. It was not good. The last thing I want to say is, now that we're ramping up into election season and elections coming and primaries in August, I hope everybody, wherever you're listening to this, is going to register to vote, know who your candidates are. If you need help finding out, if you're in Broward or Florida and you want to talk about it, or wherever you are, we'll look. Yeah. We'll look for you. But I want to make sure everybody's prepared, because that's the least I ask of people. As Democrats, I want you to vote. That's the least I ask. And I think that
we can't sit this one out.
Yeah, if you have the capabilities of donating money or walking for a candidate or volunteering, doing phone banking, whatever you can do to give your time, I ask that you do that. And I think that I was struggling this week a little bit with like, what's the best way to be a Democrat? What's the best way to participate? Right. Because there's a lot of judgment around that. Right? Of like, these people don't do enough. Yeah. Well, and
not
everybody's capable of doing that. And I think
every ounce of their time to things.
Yeah. And I think also a lot of people the majority of Americans are not involved in politics. They don't volunteer. They have no idea what's going on until it's time to vote. And as people who have been involved in that sort of work for years, like we were, and I've taken a huge step back personally for my own state of mind, the all I ask is that you vote. That's all that I ask, is you vote, participate, because it matters. It matters when you show up and who you show up for. So do that, please. There's nothing that scarier now than what is happening politically, and it's so easy to throw your hands up and say, ugh. Right. It's so easy to do that.
That power is in the ballot box.
It really is.
You gotta just go and do it.
If you're disappointed with things that are happening,
everybody with you.
Yeah. If you're disappointed about things that are happening, at this moment and in this election, we still have a chance to be a part of that. Right. I don't know what comes after that. Right. So if this is the last chance we get to stand up for what we know is right as Americans, which is how we were raised. You know, the way that I feel about America now is not how I felt about it when I was 10 years old. I thought I lived in the greatest country in the world, and I had all these great opportunities, and what an amazing place, and we are the freest people on the state of the earth. We're the saviors. We're the ones who come in and rescue people. That's how I was raised, and that's not what America looks like right now. No, we doubt our justice system. We doubt news. We doubt facts.
And you have leaders across the globe that are terrified of a second Trump presidency.
Take a step back,
they understand,
and look at what the real reality of it all is.
It's like you got, and if you're in a position where like, hey, none of this isn't affecting you, like you need to understand that there are people in your life that this is affecting. So if you don't need to do it for yourself, like just do it for people that you love in the world.
Yeah.
Like you have, like this is the one thing. Make a day of it. There's so much early voting in most states. Like just go, hey, we're going to go vote, and then we're going to go to lunch, and we're going to go vote, and we're going to go do this, and we're going to go vote. Like find a way to have it, you gather up all your friends and like make it a fun thing. Just go out and do it, please. Or vote by mail, like whatever you want to do.
Yeah. This, this D-Day, what was it, the 80th anniversary of D-Day this week, and is incredible. The stories, the videos, the impact that had. These men are now in their 90s and 100 years old, traveling to France to go to these celebrations. These are people who put everything on the line so that we could have this sort of freedom, and it's something that should not be taken lightly.
Throw it away.
Yeah, it shouldn't be taken lightly. And
a reality show host. Yeah. Like, what are we doing?
And we can sit and talk all day about how the party as a whole, I can't even touch the state party, it's so disgusting, but the Democratic Party as a whole has to reevaluate. We can sit and make fun of Republicans and they're falling apart. We don't have a grasp on actually taking advantage of that.
No.
And there's no plan to...
It needs to
do that.
Really,
and
be abortion, birth control.
It shouldn't all be on an election. Like this should not be. It should not be like this. But that's how it goes when you don't take advantage of those moments that you could have done something. And as much as like the contraception, like we shouldn't be here. But Democrats had power for a lot of years and did nothing. So we got to take advantage of those moments that we can, because they're planning. Anytime they get a chance to have power, they know exactly what's going to happen when they get it.
Right.
So we should be doing the same thing.
And we should, because if we can win, imagine, if we can win the Senate and the House and the presidency, this is where we can fight gerrymandering. This is where we can do term limits.
Yeah.
This is where we can get rid of, we can put judges out. This is where we can make changes to our Constitution. This, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much that we can do. We can go to the popular vote. You know what I mean? There's so many things that need to be done. Adding more seats, thinking about population of states and representation. There's so many things that need to be done to make things more fair and equitable to the people living in these states, so that everyone has a voice. That's not happening now.
Right.
I mean, how many millions of people are in California and they have the same representation as like another state that has a less than a fraction of that? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. Like, it's not fair. And they know that it's not fair because it's all about maintaining control. And if you have to think about why don't they want things fair and equitable? Why? What are they planning?
Right.
Give me a break.
When you think about something even as, I don't want to say small, but this transgender girl playing volleyball, that happened, and that law that stands because we have people elected who made it that way.
Right.
And God bless the school board is going to have to make this decision, but the way you change that, if you don't like it, is we got to change the Florida House. Right. We got to flip these seats. And so we got to make sure we're doing what we can so we can change the shit that they've done and make sure it's protected moving forward. We have to do it. And do what you can is all I say. And here's another fucking thing. Sorry, Tina. People are allowed to criticize the party. You can't blindly have loyalty to anything.
Can't. Look
ever.
at MAGA. That's MAGA.
Never, ever,
MAGA is
ever.
blind loyalty.
You can criticize Biden and vote for him. You can criticize the state of Florida Democrats and still be a Democrat. That is, last I checked, that was still okay to do. So, right. And also, if you're not criticizing them publicly, you're not doing your job. You don't criticize the party and their leaders behind closed doors. If you don't do it publicly and to make change, it's never going to change. So stop staying quiet. If you don't like what's happening, you should start saying something. I'm tired of that. Because they make people who criticize the party, they want to make them outsiders. Right. No. by the way, if there's something to criticize, you should look at yourself as a leader and say, what am I doing that people are what should I do to fix it?
Right.
Because if you're doing a good job, no one will criticize you.
Right.
At least in the same party. Outsiders will, but the party won't.
And if you're doing a good job, you're going to get more people ready to do things
Absolutely.
for you. You know what I mean?
Come on.
All right.
Well, let's get the fuck out of here.
We got to do another.
We're gonna do 2 episodes today.
2 episodes.
All right.
All right.
Bye. Bye.